So thank you so much. It's so great to see so many here, and I would like to wish you warmly welcome to this lecture about how to get an awesome memory. Can you all hear me well when I'm speaking like this? Yeah? If there should be any problem with the sound, or if you happen to have a question during the lecture, just raise your hand and you will be allowed to ask it. So first of all, I would just like to say that I'm so happy to be here, and it's so great to be able to be a part of creating this amazing online memory course, and to get to have this lecture. And actually just being in Darwin is really, really cool for me. I've seen a lot of very, very interesting animals, for example, that really wouldn't like the temperature in Sweden. So that's a very nice bonus. And regarding the lecture, I would like to start with a small memory demonstration. So sort of to try to give you an image of what is going on in my mind while I memorize things. And to do this, I have Simon here, and he's got a paper. Let's see if we can get it up on the screen. A paper with 30 small lines on it. And then I would like someone from the audience to just read out 30 single digits, random digits, and then Simon will write them down, and I will try to memorize them as they're read out, and then try to recall them. Alright, so just a small demonstration to start with. So do we have someone here that feels that they have a natural talent for randomizing digits? Yeah?
I have one I prepared earlier, which is actually the canaster results from a game between Choir and Timothy Skinner, myself, and our son Felix. So there are random digits.
All right. Yeah. So do you have 30 random digits there?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, that's great. So yeah, I think it might be a little bit like it looks as if it might be prepared, since we know each other a little bit and you have it prepared there. So we might actually take someone else just to make sure that it's no trick. Someone just it's quite easy. You just have to read out digits, whichever digit comes to mind. Yeah? Someone?
9.
Oh yeah, right. Okay. So one person can read all the digits. So just put your hand up if you think you can do it. Yeah, right. Okay. So I'd like you to just give you some instructions, and then you can start. So read up the single digits, so between 0 and 9, and at a moderate speed, like 1 per second, so that Simon has the time to write them down, and pretty loud and clearly so that I can hear it well. So like 0, 5, 9, 2, like that. All right. So yeah, start when you feel ready.
3, 1, 5, 1, 8, 9, 4, 2, 1, 0, 3, 7, 8, 3, 1, 0, 4, 6, 8, 5, 3, 1, 6, 8, 5, 6, 2, 1, 7, 5.
All right. Thank you so much. Okay, I will just go through them quickly in my mind to see that I've got them all. And then jumping in this, and then she. All right, I think that I have them. So I'm going to try to recall them, to read them out in the same order, and you see them here? Yeah? And if I should read some digit wrong, then I want you to just shout out "wrong," so that I don't miss it and get the chance to correct myself. All right? Okay, so are you ready from the beginning? 5.
Wrong.
Great. Just wanted to see how you do. Okay, so this time for real. But keep on telling me if I'm wrong. 3, 1, 5, 1, 8, 9, 4, 2, 1, 0, 3, 7, 8, 3, 1, 0, 4, 6, 8, 5, 3, 1, 6, 8, 5, 6, 2, 1, 7, 5. Thank you. Thank you. So, yeah, well, these digits will actually probably now stick in my mind for at least a couple of days. So if you'd like to, you can test me again after the lecture, or if we meet tomorrow or the day after that. But yeah, actually this was just 30 digits, and if you're doing this in a memory competition, it isn't that good really. This discipline exists at the memory competitions, and then it works the same way, that you listen to digits, read out 1 per second, but then it just continues for a very, very long time, and then after it's finished, you get to write them down in the correct order, and then you see how many you remember. And I actually had the world record in this discipline last year, and I managed to write down 399 out of 400 correct. But there was one 8 there that should have been a 0, so there's still some room for improvement, as you see. So yeah, so obviously it is possible to remember a lot more, but I thought that you might be a little bit bored if I started with 6 minutes of random digits. I'm going to explain exactly how this can be done, and actually how anyone can do what I just did. But I'll save that secret for some more minutes. And right now I'll just tell you that to remember these digits that I just did, I only had to picture a friend of mine sitting with an ice cream in my sofa, together with Ron Weasley, who was blown away by a big saxophone. And on the television set, there were Yoda, and he was also blown away, but by a big heart. And then a Swedish high jumper, was jumping on a hula hoop on the table. And finally, in the window, there were Leia from Star Wars, who flew up on a big beak. Yeah, so I do see now that some of you look a little bit skeptical, and that's completely understandable, but I'm sure that after this lecture you'll find what I just said completely logical and natural. But to get there, I guess we better start from the beginning. So my name is Jonas von Essení. I'm 23 years old, I'm coming from Sweden, and last December I was traveling with my family to China, and managed to there, for the second time in a row, win the World Memory Championships. And that's pretty cool. It's pretty nice to be able to call yourself the World Memory Champion. But what's actually really cool about all this is that if someone would have approached me about 3 years ago and told me that, Jonas, in a couple of years you will be the World Memory Champion, I would probably have found that statement as likely as if someone would have approached me today and said that, Jonas, in 2 years' time, you will be the world champion of bodybuilding. Yeah, because as you probably can see, I've never considered myself to be a very promising bodybuilder. And in much the same way, I actually, during my first 20 years on the planet, never thought that I had a particularly good memory. It was rather the opposite. Like most people, I was often irritated at how much I forgot. Things that my friends told me, or important meetings, or the things that we learned in school, which also led to that I maybe rather scribbled or watched the clouds through the windows or daydreamed instead of studying. But ironically enough, it was also exactly these qualities that made me the World Memory Champion in the end. And to explain how this significant transformation occurred, I think that I have to start with an experiment here together with all of you. And this experiment, it might feel a little bit unusual, a little bit odd probably, but I would dare to say that it might change your lives forever. So I hope that you do your very best. Do you feel ready? Okay, sort of, yeah, that's all right. I think that you'll do fine. This experiment, it's actually quite simple. We're only going to imagine some things placed upon our own body. So if you start by just picturing that on your head you have a small crosswalk, Okay, there's a crosswalk on your head. You painted zebra stripes, and there's a lot of people running back and forth, rushing over this crosswalk on your head. Okay, and it doesn't have to. You don't have to see it very clearly or very beautifully. You can just imagine some kind of crosswalk on your head. And if you think that it's difficult to see this crosswalk, you might choose the head of your classmate or friend and see a crosswalk on their head instead, if that's easier. So just as long as you see a crosswalk on someone's head in here. Can anyone see some kind of crosswalk on someone's head? Yeah, great. Okay, then you can forget about this. Don't think about the crosswalk at all anymore. But go on and focus completely on your ears. And now try to imagine that out of each ear there's a big red maple leaf growing out. Okay, so you have 2 red maple leaves growing out of your ears. And if you think that it's getting a little bit hot in here, you can try to cool yourself with them like this. Okay, you see these red leaves? Yeah, great. Then don't think about them anymore, but go on and focus on your eyes. And this might sound a little bit odd, but try to imagine that you've changed one of your eyes into a hamburger. So instead of an eye, you have a hamburger in one of your eye holes, and you can try to picture these small sesame seeds on top of it, and maybe you get a tear of mayonnaise going down your cheek like this. Okay, so hamburger in your eye. Looks quite funny. You don't see so much because you've got this hamburger in your eye. Right, then we go to the nose, and this might feel a little bit uncomfortable, but try to visualize that you take a pair of chopsticks, and then very carefully put them up your nostrils, one in each nostril like this. And if you feel that you're very skilled, you've got very good motoric skills in your nose, then you can try to pick up a small sushi bite like this if you'd like to. But it's really odd because you just have to think that you have this chopsticks in your nose, right? Then we go to the mouth, and now think that you have a soccer ball, like a round soccer ball in your hand, and then you're putting this soccer ball into your mouth like this. So you get a lot of tension on the jaw like this, and you can taste the grass and the dirt from the soccer ball, but you still have it in there, all right? Yeah, good. I see someone like putting tension on the jaw. That's really, really nice. Okay, the soccer ball in the mouth, and then we go to the chin. And I'd like you to imagine that your chin today is a little bit more bouncy than usual. So it's almost like a small trampoline. And that has caused a kangaroo to come over here, and this kangaroo is now jumping up and down on your chin. So when you're peeking down, you see the kangaroo going. Okay, you see the kangaroo on his chin? Yeah. We have a few left. Let's move on to the armpit. And I'd like you to think that in your armpit you have got an Indian god sitting there and meditating. So when you look there, you see this Indian god, and you might see like 4 golden arms coming out under your normal arm like this. So yeah, it's a bit unusual, but I'm sure that you can picture it, an Indian god meditating in your armpit. And then we only got 3 left, so we move on to the belly button. And imagine that you've rented out the space in your belly button to a pirate. So there's a pirate now living in your belly button, and it's very not so much space there, of course, and then it gets quite warm as well. So he's not so happy about this. He's yelling "arg, arg" all the time. Okay, so you have the pirate here yelling "arg," right? And then between your knees, imagine that you're holding like a big magic wand. You're holding it between your knees, and you're sort of swinging it around. And every time you do, you throw a curse at someone, and you hear the sound "gazam, kazam." Okay, so a wand with the sound "gazam." And then finally, at your feet, just picture that there are a big heap of algae. Okay, so it stings a little bit, and you see all this algae. You can feel them a bit with your toes. Probably very, very good for the nails. So algae on the floor. So how did you find that? A little bit unusual? Yeah? Good. We will return to this in a little while. But right now you can just forget about all this. Don't think about it at all anymore. But sit down, sit back, relax. And I'll tell you a little bit more about these memory competitions. So, did you know before this that there was such a thing as a World Memory Championship? No, most people didn't. No, it's not the biggest sport in the world yet, but it's getting bigger every year. There is a World Memory Sports Council that has a lot of small tournaments all over the world. There is actually even an Australian Open in memory that you can participate in if you'd like to. I'll probably go there later this year myself. And when you compete in these memory competitions, it's usually the same 10 disciplines. So it's like a decathlon. And it can be, one is to memorize the order of a shuffled deck of cards as quickly as possible. Another one is to memorize like a lot of digits, as many as possible in 1 hour. There's also one where you memorize names and faces, or a list of random words, or small dots of ink in a particular sequence. One of my own personal favorites is this one. 30-minute binary digits, where you're supposed to memorize as many random ones and zeros as possible in the correct sequence. And yeah, I don't know what your idea of a party is, but when the memory people get together on a Friday night, it's always 30-minute binary digits that is on the board, and we're all finding it very exciting. And it is actually quite more fun than it might appear to be at first glance. And I'll tell you a bit more about this in a moment. Yeah, anyway, this is my current Swedish record. It's a little bit under the world record, but I'm getting closer. So it's about 3,841 binary digits without any error after half an hour. And when you see this great amount of information, you might get a picture of some slightly socially impaired super genius who's sitting in his cellar all night memorizing the phone book and who can't put on his own clothes himself. But as you can see, I've come here today with clothes that I put on myself, I can guarantee you that. And the fact is that at these memory competitions, like all the people that you meet, they appear to be just ordinary people from all walks of life, like all kinds of jobs, ages, men and women, boys and girls, who in almost every case were born with just ordinary memories, but that one day stumbled upon a lecture or a documentary or a book about that thing which is called memory techniques, and which actually anyone can use to develop an amazing memory. And the good news is that it isn't even so much about like getting an amazing memory, but rather about discovering the fantastic memory that you already possess. Because all of you sitting here and the rest of the world as well already possesses like an extraordinary, really brilliant memory. The only problem is that most people don't know it yet. So I'd like to make an analogy here to maybe make it a little bit more clear. If you picture that you are a samurai, and at your side you're having a sword, and this is not just any sword. This is actually the Super Starlasting Sword of Doom! And this happens to be the most powerful sword in the world, actually the most powerful sword there ever was. It can cut through lead as if it were melting butter. It can shoot beams of fire. It gets a blue glow around it when there's a math professor nearby, etc. So it's a really good sword. But unfortunately, you do not know that you have it. So it was exactly like this for me before, that I had this sword here, but I didn't know it. So every time that I was put in front of a demanding challenge, like maybe learning a chapter in school or some vocabulary, or now and then a bear. The only thing that I really could do was to surrender, because I didn't know what to defend myself with. I didn't have anything to defend myself with, or at least that was what I thought, until that day about 3 years ago when I happened to see a book at the library where it said that anyone can get an amazing memory, and I started to read this book, and I noticed that, hey, wait a minute, the Super Starlasting Sword of Doom! And from that day, I've obviously been able to tackle any challenge that anyone could ever set in front of me. So yeah, the goal today is of course that you also shall find your Super Starlasting Swords of Doom, to follow this analogy, and I'm pretty sure that we will succeed in this, because these techniques are actually quite simple. They don't take especially much time to learn. and it's possible to break them down into 3 rather simple steps. So let's start with step number 1. And this first step, it might seem obvious, but it's actually to convert the thing that you want to memorize into something more memorable. Because when you think about it, there are certain things that no matter how much you try to get them into your head, it just doesn't seem to work. It could be like if it's a long, uninteresting book, or some complex paragraphs that you want to memorize, or really anything that doesn't really interest you. While on the other hand, there are a lot of things that you don't even have to try to remember, but you just remember them anyway, sometimes even if you don't want to remember them. Like if you've seen a very, very exciting movie, or if something fun is happening at a party or something like that. And it's obvious that it would be really great if you could take these uninteresting and not so memorable things and turn them into these things that just happen to stick in your brain without any effort. And that's of course possible to do in a lot of different ways, but there's one way that has proven to be a little bit better than most of the others. I usually call it one method to rule them all. Is there anyone who's got any idea of what this kind of memory would be? Language? No? Yeah. It's quite difficult to guess. I wouldn't have guessed it myself before I knew about this. But it's actually to memorize in images. And you might have read this sometime. You might have heard that. Just try visualizing the things that you want to memorize, and then you'll memorize everything without an effort. And of course, this doesn't help if you just hear that single line of advice and try to do it, because you have to know how to do it and how to use these techniques. But when you do, it will make it possible to memorize almost anything that you'd ever want to memorize. And there are a lot of scientific studies that have proven the visual memory to be the absolute best way of memorizing like huge amounts of information in a short amount of time and get them to stick there in your brain for a long time. And there are probably a lot of you that still feel a little bit skeptical about this, so I thought that we shall try and see if this really can be the case, if this really can be such a good way to memorize things using images. And we'll do this by going back in time a little bit to that experiment that we did in the beginning. You remember that we did an experiment? Yeah, great. Would have known what to do if you forgot about that. So that's a good start. I think that let's just go through this list, through these body parts, and see how many of them you remember. And we'll take one at a time, and you'll get some seconds to think about what was there, and then I'll count to 3. And then if you remember it, you can just say it out loud. And if you've forgotten it, you don't have to say anything. And it's completely alright if you've forgotten all of it, because I didn't tell you to memorize anything, and we just went through this once rather quickly. It was the first try, so it's completely alright if everything is gone. But let's try and see if something got stuck there. So we start with the head, and no one says anything, but just think about what you had on your head, and I'll count to 3. And if you remember it, you can just say it out loud. Right? 1, 2, 3. Wow, good start. Okay, this is looking promising. We go to the ears, same thing again. I'll count to 3, and if you remember it, you can just say it out loud. 1, 2, 3. Leaves. Exactly, leaves, red leaves, maple leaves, completely correct. Okay, we go to the eye. I'll count again. 1, 2, 3. Wow, it's like being in the military here, giving orders. It's a really great response. Okay, so and then in your nose, you had something a little bit uncomfortable. I'll count again. 1, 2, 3. That's right. Then you put something in your mouth. 1, 2, 3. Soccer ball. Wow, this is so great. It's almost the best response ever. Okay, and then there was something on your kangaroo that isn't usually. Okay, yeah. Okay, I gave that one away, but I'm sure you remember it. Yes, I had the picture so clear. So yeah. Okay, yeah, a kangaroo on your chin, and then something in your armpit. I won't say what it is this time. I'll count to 3 again. 1, 2, 3. Exactly, an Indian god. Yeah, your kangaroo that you always have here. Okay, and then in your belly button, you had someone who moved in. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, pirate, yelling "Arg!" And then between your legs, you're also holding something. 1, 2, 3. A magic wand. Exactly. It's a gazan. And then on the floor, there were lots of 1, 2, 3. A round of applause, I'd say. Wow, so yeah, that was actually a really nice result for doing this for the first time and just going through it once. And it seems like all of you remembered all of these 10 things in order. But you may now be getting the feeling that you just memorized a random list of 10 meaningless objects. And yeah, that would be completely understandable. But actually, you've just memorized the 10 largest countries in the world in order by surface. And how did this happen? Yeah, you might ask. Well, I will explain. Actually, every image corresponds to a country, and then it goes from your head and down to your feet in that order, so largest to smallest. So the first one, it's quite far-fetched. It's this crosswalk, and the idea there is that there's this crosswalk and a lot of people are rushing over it, so that's Russia. Number 1 there. And then we have this maple leaves, an idea. Canada, exactly. And then this hamburger, number 3. Yeah, the US. And then number 4, the chopsticks. China. And then the soccer ball, could be. Yeah, yeah, Brazil. In this case, it's Brazil with the latest World Cup and also the soccer ball, Brazil. And then the kangaroo. Yeah, really well. And now this one could be a little bit tricky, this Indian god. Yeah, India, that's right. 100% great. So it's India, and then this one could be a little bit tricky, really be a bit tricky, this pirate yelling "Arg!" Yeah? I think someone said it? Argentina, that's right, Argentina. So this is number there. And then it's sort of the same thing with the magic wand there, something that sounds like that sound Kazam a little bit. Kazakhstan, exactly, and then the algae on the floor. Algeria. Great, so now we can just run up these countries in order, forwards and backwards without any effort. Well done. So this is how it works. This is the basic idea, the first step to convert whatever you want to memorize into something that makes more sense to the brain, or not always more sense, but more, which is more fun and more memorable for the brain. So, for example, images, which has proven to work very well for most people. And that takes us to step number 2. And step number 2, that's more about how to recall these things once you got them into your brain. That might be just as tricky as actually memorizing it from the beginning. So let's take a normal situation. You're sitting and you're reading, studying something, and maybe you're reading about Macedonia, and you read that the capital of Macedonia is Skopje. And then you think that, wow, I'd really like to memorize that. So you take this bit of information, this Skopje, and you put it in your brain somewhere. You don't really know where it goes or what happens, but you hope that it will stay there, and sometimes it does. And say that you actually managed to get it in there this time. Then a couple of days later, the real problem occurs, and that's when someone is confronting you and saying, well, I'm doing this quiz now on my mobile phone, and it's really urgent. And the question is, what is the capital of Macedonia? Do you know? And then you think, oh yeah, I read it only 2 days ago. It was, I know it. It's, and then you're sort of like wiggling your brain, and you hope that it will appear somehow out of here. And sometimes it does, and sometimes it doesn't. Is this familiar at all? Yeah. And that it is like this, it isn't really surprising, because it's probably, the reason behind this is probably that in most people's brains it looks something like this. So just a big mess of childhood memories and blueberry pie recipes and jokes from the latest Simpsons episode, etc. And it's obvious that in this mess it's very difficult, of course, to find what you're looking for. In exactly the same way as it's very difficult to find things in your house if everything is just lying around on the floor. But exactly as you can tidy up at home and put everything in its correct place, you can also clean up in your brain and make it a lot easier to find things. And it's not brainwashing, it's actually a nice way of just ordering your memories. And one of the best ways to do this is to use a thing that is called the memory palace. And this is a really, really cool thing. It's a very old technique, more than 2,000 years old, and it sounds very flashy, but it's actually rather simple. A memory palace can be any place that you know kind of well, like your house or the university or the way to the university. Just any place that you can picture yourself, you can see yourself walking through this place on a small walk, like a small journey, when you go through your house, for example. And then along this journey, you choose small points along the way where you can place whatever you want to memorize in the shape of images. And this is actually exactly what we did with the countries. Then we used our body as the memory palace, so it's a place that we know sort of well. And then we had a small journey going from the head and through the ears, eyes, nose, down to our feet. And along this journey we had 10 spots or points along the way where we placed the thing that we wanted to remember, in this case, the countries. And this makes it actually a lot more easy to recall what we memorized, because if you may take some time to think about this, but I'll ask you now, which is the fourth largest country in the world? Yeah, exactly, China. And then instead of having to hope to sort of fish for this information in this soup here inside here, you know that the countries, they are on your body, and then you just count 1, 2, 3, 4, and the memory of China is firmly attached to your nose in this case, but to a place so that you know that it's exactly there that you have to look to find it. And this thing that we did right now, it's actually just a small taste of how extremely powerful this method is, because you can memorize thousands of things using a memory palace. And for example, when I'm memorizing these ones and zeros that I showed in the beginning, I convert them into images, of course, and then I usually picture myself walking through a big amusement park in Sweden, and then I might see some images there in the entrance, and then the fountain, and then the first roller coaster, etc. And then I might do 100 of them, and then go back to the beginning, and then the thing that you place there is almost always still where you left it. So this is a very, very cool and very easy technique, and I'd like to show you sort of a bigger memory palace that I've created. It's this one here. This is there anyone who recognizes this view? No? No, it would be extremely surprising because this is actually my hometown in Sweden, Skövde, a very small town in the middle of Sweden. So yeah, but it looks like this from the sky, and I sort of picture myself walking through the city on a particular journey. So it starts here at my old high school, and then goes down to the sports arena, through the supermarket, through the park, and away to the bus stops over here. And along this journey I chose about 100 stops along the way, where I then could put whatever I wanted to memorize. And on this particular memory palace, I've chosen to memorize all of the Academy Award winners for Best Movie through the ages. So yeah, it might sound as a little bit of a silly thing to memorize, or quite unuseful, especially since you don't know what half of the movies were about. But it's actually you get sort of a nice overview of the movie history, and it's also like that when you discover these techniques and you notice how easy suddenly everything is to memorize, you sort of get obsessed by memorizing things, and you grab your hands on wherever you happen to see, for example the Oscar winners. So yeah, and then I also have to tell you that I sort of, to make it easier to quickly jump to the correct year, I've marked every 5th year with a special number image that I will tell you a little bit more about later. So I know exactly, I can jump immediately to 1965 or 1970 or 1975, etc. So I don't have to start from the beginning every time I'm looking for a year in the palace. So let's take a few examples. If you have a year between 1928, which was the first time they had the awards, and 2014, which was the latest one, that you've always been thinking about which movie won the Oscar for Best Movie that year, but you haven't had the time to Google it, then you have the opportunity now.
1979.
79? So then I just jumped to the closest 5th year, so 1980, so it's in the park here, and then I go one step back, and then I can get to a fountain, and in this fountain there are two wrestlers, and they're fighting each other, but they're very tired, so they're sort of hugging each other like this. And hug, or to hug in Swedish, is krama, And the movie is Kramer versus Kramer. So that's the image for that one. Any other year that you've been thinking about?
I'm in 62.
62. Then we go to 60. That's at the parking lot there. And then 61 and 62. It's someone going in through a door, and that's Lawrence riding on a camel. So it's Lawrence of Arabia. Shall we take one more example just to?
57?
57. So go to 55. It's in the park, and then 56 and 57. So that's a river and a bridge over it. So that's the bridge on the River Kwai. Did you also have one?
I was going to put in 2000s, 2002.
2002. Okay. Yeah, I actually taught some people this earlier today, so maybe they're here and they would also know it. But 2002, then I would go to it's the bus stops, and then 2001 go through this. So 2000, that's the gladiator standing there. So it's gladiator. Then I'm walking through a very beautiful brain, a beautiful mind, and I'll come to a port covered in something that in Swedish it's called kikärtor, and the movie is Chicago. So when I taught them this in English, I used a chicken instead. So a chicken could also remind you of Chicago. So this is how it works with a bigger memory palace, and this might seem a little bit impressive when I'm standing here showing off in front of you like this, but actually it's very simple and it's very easy, and anyone could do this. So if you, against all odds, would find yourself in Skövde one day, then just give me a call and we'll go this walk, and I'll point at the images, and you'll also know all the Academy Award-winning movies after about half an hour. So a memory palace is obviously very good when you want to remember like a big amount of information, maybe a chapter in a book, or a timeline in history, or just a long list of things in order. But sometimes you might want to just memorize some small bit of information, like someone's address or the answer to a question, and then you don't, of course, every time have to create a whole memory palace, but you can just use this principle of taking an image of something that you already have in your mind, and that has to do with this thing that you want to memorize, and then create a new image of the thing that you want to learn, and somehow associate this new image with the old image, so that you can get to the new image by taking up the old image. So I'll give you an example of this, or several examples actually. Names is one of the things that most people find quite difficult to remember. And I think that the main reason for this is that actually people don't really try to remember it, because they think that they're so bad at remembering them that they're sure that they will forget it anyway, so they don't try from the beginning. So actually just trying to remember someone's name is a very good start if you want to get better at remembering names. But you can also, of course, use memory techniques. And when you want to memorize someone's name, you usually want to, when you see the person's face, you want to be able to say, oh, hello there, Tim. So that's the first thing, and then the second thing is that you want the person's name to actually be Tim, and both of these things you can achieve with this method. So it's use the same principle. You have sort of a trigger image. The trigger image is supposed to trigger the name, and in this case it's the face of the person. So when you see the face, you want to be reminded of the name. So if you take this person here, is there anyone who recognizes him? No, it's not surprising. It's a Swedish hockey player named Douglas Murray. So you start by looking at the face and just choose. You can choose some particular feature of the face where you then place the image of the name. And it doesn't matter so much which feature, just the first thing that strikes you. We might pick the nose just to have a place to place the image. And then you just create the first image that comes to mind when you hear the name. It can be anything, just a free association, and then you sort of attach this image to the nose. So if we start with the first name, Douglas, any image that comes to mind?
Dog.
Yeah, a dog? Yeah, it's very simple. So a dog, that's enough. That would remind you of Douglas. So then you might associate this dog to the nose somehow. You might think that see that this dog is clanging from the nose, hanging from the nose like this, or I would have probably thought that the nose, like the dog is going through the nose, like he's put it through the nose like a nose ring like this, something like that. And then once you've seen this image, you won't forget it. So next time you see the nose, you see the dog, and oh, hello, Douglas. And it actually works very well. And then if you also like to remember the second name, then you just create an image of that as well and attach it to the first image. And in this case, I actually didn't realize this until yesterday, until after I showed this for some people, that the longest river in Australia is called Murray, right? Yeah, I didn't know that before, so yeah, that might be a very nice and simple image that you'd probably just imagine that the dog is sort of opening his mouth and the whole river Murray is coming out of his mouth or something like that. Yeah, that's a nice image. I didn't know it when I painted these images, so I show some other images. Yeah, and it's good also to show some different examples. Like if I would do it, if I wouldn't know about the Murray River, I would probably think that Murray, it sounds a lot like hooray. And that's what you say to someone who's having a birthday in Sweden. So I'd picture a birthday cake to remind me about this. So maybe I'll just see that the dog is holding a birthday cake. And usually it's enough to just get a little clue about the name, and that will remind you about it. So hooray should be enough to remember Murray. But if you really want to make certain that you memorize that it starts with an M and not an H, then you might also imagine that this birthday cake is bought at McDonald's. So it's got a big M on it, like a McDonald's M like that. And then you know, yeah, hooray, and then M, yeah, Murray. Or you might have had a completely different image in mind. You might think that Murray, it sounds a little bit like murder. So you'd imagine that this dog is trying to murder Douglas, like this, or just anything. So it's very personal. You can just choose the first image that comes to mind. And once you're going to use this, it's then quite easy to just throw images in the faces of people and then memorize a lot of names in a short amount of time. So yeah, please try this at the next party or thing that you're going to. Yeah, so I think that I'd like to try and give you some pictures to memorize in this way, like associating one image with another image. And these images, they will make some sense later, maybe not right now, but in a while. So yeah, if you're up to it, we can go on and memorize some images, right? Yeah. Okay. Cool. So let's start with attaching Sputnik, or associating Sputnik, the Soviet satellite, the first satellite that was put up, with Luke Skywalker. So does everyone know who Luke Skywalker is? Yeah? Yeah, exactly, from Star Wars. So if you don't know him, then you can just imagine any guy whose name is Luke. So it doesn't matter, it doesn't have to be Luke Skywalker. It can be any Luke, and then associate this person with Sputnik. And you can do this in any way you'd like. I would probably just picture Luke sitting on Sputnik and traveling on it and looking down on Earth, see what kind of planet it is. Something like this. So I'll give an example for every image, but if you come up with something else, you can use your own association instead. And yeah, as you see here, he's also got Yoda on his back, but that doesn't really matter. It's only Luke who is the important person here. So you just have to imagine Luke riding on Sputnik. Okay, that's the first one. Then let's move on to Elvis Presley, and we'll associate him with a cookie. So you might picture that you're finally you gotten tickets to a concert with Elvis Presley, and you're finally there. You're seeing the King live. It's really amazing. But then suddenly someone is throwing a cookie in Elvis's chest so that he actually dies, and it's horrible. But yeah, shit happens. So. So Elvis gets a cookie in his chest and dies. Yeah, probably something that you'd remember. So just Elvis and a cookie. And if you come up with something else, you might see him just eating a big cookie or anything. But yeah, you can use this image. So Elvis and cookie, and then let's go on to this. This is actually the Swedish Parliament, and this one might be a little bit more tricky because we're going to associate it with a special Swedish chocolate brand called Marabou. You don't recognize that? No, it's probably not so famous outside of Sweden. But yeah, we're going to use it anyway. So yeah, you might just try to remember that the name of this brand is Marabou, like the Marabou store. Or you might, if you're a Nintendo fan, you might picture Mario and Boo fighting over a piece of chocolate. So Mario, Boo, Marabou. Yeah, or just try to remember it's Marabou. And to then remember this chocolate brand and associate this with Sweden's parliament, you might imagine that Sweden is actually sponsored by Marabou. It isn't, of course, but you can imagine that every morning every member of parliament is getting a piece of chocolate when they arrive to make them happy during the day, and there might even be a big piece of chocolate behind the desk there to make sure everyone sees that Marabou is the sponsor of Sweden. So that's what the packages looks like. So Marabou and Sweden. Okay, this is a little bit tricky. I don't blame you if you don't remember the name Marabou. And then we have the last image. And to this one, we're actually going to associate 3 different images. So it's the Sydney Opera House, obviously. The first thing that we want to associate with this is a gum. It's like a chewing gum, a bubble gum. So you might imagine that it's the first time they have a show here at the Opera House, and someone has put a big gum up like on the top of it here somewhere. And when they are singing and people are breathing, like a lot of air is coming out, and it's filling up this gum to make it a big, nice bubble gum like that. Okay, so bubble gum, or gum. That's the first image. And the second image is the second thing we want to associate with this is tar. So tar, that's the name for the thick black thing, right? So then you might just think that while they are painting the Opera House, someone is painting it with tar, which is completely wrong. So that makes it take a lot longer than usual to finish everything, because they have to paint over this tar with the white color. So just see some tar on top of the Opera House. And then the last thing, which is a little bit more abstract, it's a dozen of something we want to associate with this. And then you might think, for example, that to get into the Opera House you have to be 12 people at a time. So you might see 12 people coming in an egg carton. Usually we have a dozen of eggs in them in Sweden, coming to the Opera House like this. So a dozen of people coming to the Opera House. Okay? So we got these 3 images, and then let's move on to something else. Do you think you got it all? Yeah, we'll see you later. But you don't have to worry about it. You don't have to think about it at all. I'll try to distract you with some other images and see how well you do later. So I have some more examples of how you can use memory techniques to remember certain things. Of course, I heard before that some people had to go earlier. So if you have to leave, if you have some appointment or something, then I don't mind. If you leave, of course, if you have to leave, then you're free to leave, and I won't take offense. But if you're interested in memorizing something more, then you better stay, because there's some really exciting stuff coming up. Geography is actually one of the most suitable things for using memory techniques on. And it's interesting there because in schools they're not using memory techniques at all, at least not in Sweden, which is quite a shame, I think. But sometimes there is like a small memory technique just coming up to the surface and then going back again. And when it does, it usually helps a lot. So for example, there's one country in Europe that if you go into a Swedish second grade class and ask them to point to different countries on the map, there's one European country that everyone can point to except for Sweden. Any idea of which?
Italy.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, cool that it also worked here. Yeah, that's right. So Italy. And why is it so easy to remember where Italy is? Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it looks like a shoe or a boot or a high-heeled shoe kicking a football or whatever. So once you've heard this, once someone has said to you, yeah, look at Italy, it looks like a high-heeled shoe, then you'll never forget it. It's every time you see it, you see, yeah, that's Italy. And if you want to look for it, you look for it and you say, yeah, that's the shoe, that's Italy. But since this is working so extremely well and you don't even have to put an effort into it, why settle with Italy? You can obviously use this for memorizing all the countries and all the rest of the geography of the world with a little bit of imagination. So to take an example, here is South America. Looks like this on the map, and with a little bit of modification you can make it look like this. And I don't know if it ever occurred to you, but Argentina, it looks really a lot like a guy who's got a chicken club in his eye. And he's obviously yelling "Arg" because of this, so same as the pirate, Argentina. Chile looks like a chili pepper, very convenient. Paraguay sort of looks like a baby in the middle there, and you might imagine that this baby is looking for his parents, so Paraguay. Colombia looks like a cool cow, etc. So when you start using this technique, it's quite easy to memorize all the geography of the world without much effort, and it's also quite a lot of fun. And you can use the same technique to memorize like bones in the body or different organs and stuff. Just look at the shape and see what it reminds you of, and then associate it somehow to an image. It even works with words and vocabulary. It's sort of the same as with the names. You take something that sounds similar to it and create an image of that, and then you can memorize a lot of vocabulary very quickly. I've taken a sort of a tough example here to show how you can tackle these. So this is a word, isi shiyaga lumbili. Anyone who knows which language this belongs to? Swahili, some people are saying. I think that's a good guess. I don't know much about this at all, actually. But I only know this word because my girlfriend was doing voluntary work in South Africa, where they spoke Zulu, which this is from, among other languages, of course. So this is a Zulu word, and anyone who's got any idea what it could mean? 8? Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so we have some Zulu knowledge here anyway. Yeah, exactly. So it was a little clue at the side there as well. The first thing that may strike you is that it seems very inconvenient to have such a long word for a digit, but apparently they do, and there's probably some poor guy who's got a phone number 88888 and has to tell about that the whole morning when he's meeting people. But if you anyway want to memorize this, then you can of course break it down into smaller pieces. It sounds like something that you can picture as an image. So I'll probably start by creating the trigger image or like the base image, something that looks like an 8. It might be a racetrack or something. And then on this I'll place these other images symbolizing the pronunciation of the word or how it's spelled. So I'll probably start here with the easy and just think ironically that like it's ironical that this word is so easy. So easy, and then she yaga lombili. It sounds sort of like she yoga lamb Billy. So you might imagine a girl sitting on this racetrack doing yoga with a lamb named Billy. And then you have the image of this. So it might seem a little bit like it takes a lot of work, but once you got into it, you can do it quite automatically, and then you'll have a lot of these images, and it's very easy to see it and to remember it, and then you won't forget it so easily. And especially if you start with shorter words, of course, it's easier, and then go on to longer ones. So now you know 8 in Zulu, Isi Shiyaga Lombili. And you may think that this is like the worst example that I could find, but actually there are of course a lot worse things that you can try and memorize. For example, is there someone here who's been to Bangkok? Yeah? A few people? Did you know that Bangkok actually has a much longer name, a longer official name? No? No, it's they don't use it so much for obvious reasons. Bangkok, which seems to be such a short and easy name to remember, is actually named this. And I'm going to give it a try, with the wrong pronunciation, of course. Krung tep maha nakon amon ratana kusin mahintara ayutaya maha diluk popno para trachatani burirum udom rachani vet maha satana mon piman awatan satit sakatatia bitsanu kamprasit. Thank you. So this was just a lot of images placed on a memory palace, and then I just went through it and read them all in sequence. So that shows that you can memorize almost any kind of nonsense as well with this technique. And this takes us to step number 3, the final step. And this first step, that's actually then to convert the things into something more memorable, like images, and then the second step is to place it somewhere or associate it to something so that you can find it easily. But without the third step, both these first steps are actually almost meaningless. So the third step is actually the absolutely most important one, and the third step is repetition. And now probably a lot of you drew a sigh inside, and I heard a lot of you actually drawing a real sigh as well, because you probably imagine that with the amazing techniques and these amazing stories and images, it will be possible to memorize anything, and you'd never have to repeat it at all. You just have it there for a very, very long time. And it's partly true, because when you memorize things with these memory techniques, you will have it there, it will stick for much longer. But if you never repeat it, it will, in the end it will fade. But it'll probably stick there for quite some time. So if you try yourself in maybe a week or 2 weeks and just go through these countries again, you'll probably surprise yourself by memorizing, knowing them all. So try that as well. But the good news about this is that you actually don't have to repeat that much, just as long as you know exactly when and how to repeat. So it's sort of a smart way of repeating. And I'll explain this smart repetition, which makes, like the idea is that you put as little effort as possible into it and get as big results as possible out of it. So this smart repetition, it's based on science from the 19th century actually. It's a German psychologist named Hermann Ebbinghaus who did a lot of studies on people's memories. And yeah, he did just the thing that you would do if you wanted to study someone's long-term memory. He taught a group of people some things, and then he tested how much of that they remembered after a certain period of time. And then he compared different groups in different periods of time. Yeah, and that concluded in this graph, which is called the forgetting curve, a very important curve. On this vertical axis, we have the percentage of the things that you memorized from the beginning that you still remember, and on this horizontal axis, you have the time that has passed since you memorized things. So, if we imagine just like a normal student setting, like a normal lecture, you're sitting in a lecture, you're memorizing things, you're taking notes, you're quite interested, trying to learn things, and then directly afterwards, you may of course be somewhere up here, around 100%, and then it starts to go down gradually. And after say 3-4 days, what percentage do you think we will be on after 3-4 days usually, like average? 50? Yeah, another idea? 70? Is it? 30? Yeah? Yeah, that's some good guesses. The actual findings in this experiment is that after 3 to 4 days, the average percentage that we still remember is about 5 to 10%. So yeah, it goes down really, really quickly. It doesn't look good at all. And this is like the usual case. If you learn something and then don't repeat it, but just don't think about it, then it will go down this quickly, and then it will stay here at about maybe 2-3% that you will have with you for the rest of your life. But you obviously lose a lot along the way. So this is also the case if you study as you might normally study. At least we do it in Sweden. Like you save all the work until the evening before the exam, and then you're reading whatever you have to memorize like 7 times. Then of course it might be a little bit flatter here in the beginning. You might even be able to get a really good grade at the exam and get a lot of answers correct. But then it will go down and stay approximately at the same level. So if someone would give you the same exam after some weeks, you would probably perform much worse than the first time. And I'm sure that you also have felt this, like a lot of time you're putting it in there for the exam, and then it goes away, and then you have to get it in there again next time you want to memorize it. But if you, instead of taking these 7 repetitions on the night before the exam, just listen carefully to the lecture, and then just once after some hours after the exam or after the lecture, and maybe later the same day, just quickly go through your notes or go through your images in your head. Just repeat what you learned quickly. Then you will of course jump up again, and then it will go down a little slower and stay a little higher. So with this one extra repetition, you might actually twice the amount of information that you would have left from the beginning. And if you then do the same thing the day after, just quickly again go through your notes, so just think about what you learned, then you'll go up again, and then go down a little bit less steep, and end up even higher. So this it's still not high, but it might be 5 times as much as without the repetitions. And then if you do the same thing after some days, after some week, after some month, you'll actually end up flattening out almost here at 100%, or very high at least. So that means that if you take these 7 read-throughs, and instead of placing them all at the same time, like before the exam, you just distribute them over a longer time interval, and have longer and longer time in between the repetitions, you'll go from here up to here, which is quite a significant difference. And with the same effort and the same amount of time. So this looks really cool, I suppose, and it's very nice for the colors as well, I must say. In the beginning you think, wow, this is brilliant, I must start incorporating this immediately. But then you might start thinking practically, then you realize that you would have to actually write down for everything that you remember, write down that I'm supposed to memorize, to repeat this in 3 days, and this in 7.5 weeks, and this in 2.3 years, etc. And you'd actually have to almost hire someone just doing all that work for you. But in today's modern society, there is of course excellent apps for this. And there's one app, like I suppose there are a lot of apps with the same function, but the one that I'm using, it's very nice, very convenient. It's called Anki, A-N-K-I. Apparently it means to memorize in Japanese. It's actually free for Android. If you have Android, it's free. I think it's called Anki Droid there. It's also free to download on your computer from the website. It does cost a little bit for iPhone. I don't really know why, but yeah, it's definitely worth it. Or maybe you can find something else, some similar app for that. So the way Anki works is that you, every time that you learn something interesting, something that you would like to remember, you'd like to store in your long-term memory, you just put that piece of information into the app in the form of a question and an answer. So for example, if you hear after whom America was named, and then you think, oh, I'd like to remember that, then you just put this question and answer inside of the Anki. And then you take up your phone, like some minutes every morning, and just go through today's Anki, and then it will, after a while, pop up this question. And then you just think about it, after whom was America named? Someone who knows? Yeah, good guess, but actually there was another guy who got the whole continent named after him.
America.
Yeah, exactly, Amerigo Vespucci. So then you might just remember it, or you might have a picture of an American wasp wearing Gucci or something, or you just remember it, and then you think, yeah, it's Amerigo Vespucci, and then you check and say, yeah, that was the right one, and then you just choose if you remembered it, if it was, yeah, you remembered it good, or if it was easy or very easy, or if you didn't remember it, then want to have it again. And then Anki will, with an algorithm based on this forgetting curve, calculate when you need to memorize it, to repeat this the next time, so that you have to repeat it as rarely as possible, but still can be sure that it will stay inside of your brain. So this is really cool. So I actually put everything that I want to keep in my memory for a long time into Anki, and it takes it just some minutes every morning, and then I know that it will stay there. So I like to compare Anki to a treasure chest where you put all your memories and you know that they will stay in there. And that actually makes it extremely much more motivating when you're studying, because you know that you will actually remember these things for the rest of your life instead of just forgetting them after some days, which is the normal case. So I definitely warmly recommend Anki. Yeah, and this was actually all the 3 steps. So now you know almost everything there is to know about the memory techniques and how to memorize stuff. So I hope that you will actually try to use this after the lecture. But we have one thing left that I didn't talk about, and that might be a little bit interesting, and that is how to memorize numbers. Oh, not supposed to put this on my water bottle. So yeah, it's also a cool thing, because a lot of people would find it, difficult to, probably difficult to memorize like lots of numbers, like long sequences of numbers. Some people might find it easy to memorize a few numbers like that, but for most people it's hard. And the reason for this is probably that numbers in themselves are quite meaningless. Like they don't have any if you don't assign them a meaning, they don't mean anything. And even if you try to use a memory palace to see a 2 in your hair and a 5 in your ear and 9 in your eye, you'd soon start to mix them up, because it doesn't mean anything in particular to have a 2 in your hair, for example. So that's why these techniques are based on converting numbers into something more interesting, into some more interesting pictures. And one of the first methods that will be described if you read a memory book is to convert every single digit into something that looks like, something that has got sort of the same shape. So you may, for example, picture a goose or a swan holding a stick, and on top of this stick it's balancing a hula hoop, and then you throw a Happy Meal through the hula hoop. Okay, can you see that in front of you? Yeah? And now you just memorize the height of Sweden's highest mountain, Kebnekaise. Because if you translate these images into the pictures that look similar to the images, then we start with the swan. Any idea?
2.
Yeah, exactly. It looks like a 2, and then a stick. Yeah, 1. And the hula hoop? 0. And then the Happy Meal? Yeah, exactly. That's a 3 because the McDonald's M looks sort of like a 3 if you twist it. So yeah, it didn't come up with something 3 looked like a 3, so that would have to do. So now you know that the height of Kebnekaise is
2,103.
2,103 meters. So yeah, so it's quite a nice way, and it's possible to remember quite a lot with only these simple symbols. But to make it a lot more effective, you have to have images for more than just one digit. And so at these memory competitions, almost everyone has at least one image for every 2-digit number. Some even have it for 3-digit numbers. And there's one guy, a German guy, who's got an image for every 4-digit numbers. So he's learned 10,000 different images, and he's very good at remembering numbers. But yeah, we won't learn like 10,000 images now, but we'll start with a simple system instead for coming up with images and words for more than one digit. And this system, it's very famous. Like if you study memory, it's very famous, and it's called the major system. And it's based on this table in which every digit corresponds to one or more consonant sounds. So you just learn this table. So 0, for example, corresponds to the S sound or the Z sound. Or the soft C, but that's the same sound. So it's the sounds that matter here. And 1 corresponds to T or D or Th. And if there are more than one sound assigned to a particular digit, then it's because these sounds are like sort of in the same place in the mouth. Like if you say T, D, you notice that you use the same, you put your tongue in the same way. And it's really the same sound but with and without tone. So it's the same with P, B, and F, V. So you just learn this table. Maybe it takes you 20 minutes to learn it sort of well. And then you can use these sounds together with vowels. Since there's no vowels in here, you can just put vowels around the sounds and inside and outside of them to create words. And the best thing is then if you create words that you can see as images later. So yeah, we'll do some examples. So we have these numbers. So we start with a 4. And then you just check which sound it corresponds to. And if you learn the table, you of course know it already. But look here, 4, that corresponds to R, so the R sound. And then you can put vowels before or after or in between, not in between this one, but before or after or on both sides of the R to create a word. And you can also use H and W because they doesn't correspond to a digit. So W, H and also Y and all the vowels can be used together with R sound to create a word. Any idea of some word that could be created? Say it again? Row? Okay, you don't know, but row is actually a word that could be created. So it might be. I'll give you some examples for the first one. So row, or war, or hair, or air, like anything where you just use vowels, W, H, and Y together with this sound, and then in the right order. So hair could be like a simple thing you could also see. So you can remember hair instead of 4. Of course, if you only have one digit, then you might just as well remember the digit. But when you have more digits, it can be really useful to convert them into words. So if we look at 74, 7 that corresponds to K or G. So K or G, that sound. And 4 still corresponds to R. So K, and then vowels. Say car, yeah, that's a very nice image. You can just see a car instead of 74. Something else? Cry, yeah, exactly, yeah, that's nice. So like in the beginning, of course, it's difficult and you have to check the table all the time and to try to come up with this. But once you learn the table and you have it like naturally, then you can just very quickly create words out of long sequences of numbers. So that's really nice. So car or cry, or it could be crow as well, or core. That's great. And then 3, 1, 4. Now this is a little bit more difficult, but then you just check it again. 3, that corresponds to M, and then 1 to T or D, and then or Th, and then R again. So T, R. Mother, exactly. That's nice. So if you want to remember the beginning of pi, you can just think of your mother, or you can think of a meteor or metro, or anything like that. And then we have this last one, and I don't expect you to come up with something for this, but I'll just give it as an example. like yeah, if you probably want to divide this into smaller groups. So if you start with 7, 6, that would be g, sh. So that could be gosh. You just think they're saying gosh. And then 9, 2, that's p and n. So it could be piano. And then 0, 3, 0, that's s, m, s. So it could be Sims, like The Sims. If you know the game, yeah. So then you might picture that you're playing Sims. You're playing the Australian version of The Sims, and then you notice that you can actually learn to play the piano in the game, and you didn't know this. So you're saying, "Gosh, I didn't know that I could play piano in The Sims." And if you do this, you actually memorize the surface area of Australia in the square kilometers. So you might now say that, gosh, I didn't know that a piano in The Sims could teach me the surface area of Australia. So that's 7,692,030 square kilometers. So now you know that as well. So this is of course the thing that you have to learn this table, and then you can convert sequences of numbers into words and images. But then you also have to be able to do it the other way around. That's actually easier, because then if you have a word and want to convert it back into numbers, you start by just ignoring all of the vowels. All of the vowels or W or Y or H. And then you look at what sounds you have left and then just convert them according to the table into numbers. So pen would be which number? Exactly, 92, because P corresponds to 9 and N corresponds to 2. And drone would be, yeah, exactly, 142. So D, that's 1, and R is 4, and N is 2 again. So 142. And spaghetti? Yeah, exactly, yeah. I hear that a lot of you are saying 09711, and it's almost correct. But one thing to have in mind using the system is that it's only the sounds that matter. So if it's like 2 teeth, as if here, then it's still only one sound. So you only count it as 1. So yeah, like of course you could choose to count it the other way, but it makes it easier. So that would be 0971. All right, I think that you're ready for actually using this on some things. Yeah, so you won't have to memorize the table. I will have it here on the side. But I wonder, I'm going to ask you some questions, and I wonder if you can answer them using some of the information that you might have memorized earlier and this table. And if you know the answer to these questions before, then you don't answer it. But if you know it by using what you just learned and this table, then please answer it. So the first question is, which year during the 1900s did the Russians or the Soviet get Sputnik up? So we're looking for 2 digits. 57, exactly. You probably all remember Luke Skywalker, and that's Luke, that's L, K, that is 5, L, and K, 7. So that's 57. So now you know that. Okay, great. So let's see. Another question. Which year in the 1900s did Elvis Presley die? Exactly. 77. So that's cookie. So 77. Okay, great. Well, you have a lot of general knowledge in here. Okay, now this is a bit tricky one, I suppose. How many members are there in the Swedish Parliament? Yeah, that's correct. Would you like to convert it? Yeah, I think there's some people who got it. 349. So Marabou, that's M, 3, R, 4, and B, 9. So now you know that as well. Marabou, 349 members. And then we have some questions here. Like I got 3 questions for you about the Sydney Opera House. And the first question is, which year in the 1900s did the Opera House open? 73, exactly. Gum, that would be. And how many years did it take to construct, to finish the construction of the Opera House? 14 exactly. Tar, 1-4. And finally, how many million Australian dollars, like counted by the time that I made it, did it cost to build the Opera House? Yeah, 102 dozen. 102. Great. So you're really good at this. And then one last control question. What is his name? Yes. Well done. Thank you. Thank you so much. So yeah, we're going to have some questions now. So feel free to ask me any question. And if you have a question that you don't want to ask in front of everyone, you can just come up later and ask it. Yeah.
Do you do any dietary supplementation like ginkgo biloba or anything like that?
Say it again.
Do you use any herbal stimulants or additives to help with memory?
No, actually, no, not usually. I think it probably could work, but I haven't tried it so much. I'm a vegetarian, so I have a special diet, but I don't know if that affects it a lot. I suppose that they still don't have so many rules about doping in the World Memory Championship, so you could probably try any substance you'd like. But I haven't tried it so far, so I can't say anything about it. Yes? Yeah, that's also a good question. Like if I have a particular journey in a memory palace, I wouldn't I wouldn't place new information on the old information. I could do that, but then I would sort of overwrite the old information. So it's quite easy. You can really choose what you want to keep in your memory palace and what you want to take away from it. Because if you want to erase something, you can just overwrite it with new information. So I might use the same place, but I use a different journey. So I might use my house for several journeys, but they cross, but they don't. Yeah, it's not the same journey. Mm-hmm.
How do you know which journey is for which sequence?
Usually you just remember it. It's obvious. Yeah, since you remember that you were at this place when you memorized this, so it's quite easy to remember it. But I also have like a memory palace where I put all my memory palaces, so I can go through that and easily find what I want to find. So if I wouldn't come up with it, I will look in my memory palace.
Do you know? Do you know how to memorise mathematical equations and things like that?
Yeah, sort of. It is possible, and I have sometimes done it. But I think that of course, if you've got like a lot of mathematical equations, then you might want to memorise them. But the best thing usually is to just try to really understand them, because then you'd probably be able to come up with them even without memorising them, and then you remember them anyway. But it is possible. It isn't extremely convenient. You have to sort of create a system for different images for square root and sine and cosine, etc. But if you do that, then you could sort of memorize them in a pretty similar way to memorizing numbers.
Do you recommend doing the crocodile tank in Mitchell Street?
Say it again.
Do you recommend doing the crocodile tank in Mitchell Street?
Yeah, it's great. It's actually, it was really good. And the second time I actually didn't have to memorize it, so I could focus completely on the crocodile, and it was so cool and so big, like really like a dinosaur. I've actually never seen a real crocodile before, so coming from Sweden, that was an extremely cool experience. I definitely think you should do it. So and you might want to memorize some cyclones as well. That was quite fun as well.
Do you ever forget anything?
That's also a good question that I get asked a lot, and the fact is that I do. I do forget things quite often, actually, because since this is something that I wasn't born with, but it's something that I've learned to use, and I have to consciously use the techniques to memorize things. Like sometimes it's almost automatic, but I have to make a sort of conscious effort to memorize it and to use it. So when I'm not using the memory techniques, I forget just as much as anyone else. So mostly I don't use it. I mostly use it when it's something that I really want to remember, something that I think might be important or fun to remember. Then I use it, but otherwise I don't. So I still forget quite a lot of things.
Can you recite to us the memory palace for remembering the cyclones the other day?
Yeah, actually, I could have done it, but I have overwritten. I've used the same memory palace to overwrite it with other stuff. So yeah, it's unfortunate. I probably would have been able to do it with some effort, but.
Johan, could you recite the 30 numbers that you started with? And could someone just put them back up on the screen?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, can Simon put them on? Okay, I'll just go through them to make sure that I have them there. Maybe I shouldn't have said that. Okay, so we have sitting there with ice cream, and then Ron Weasley and the saxophone, and then Yoda and the heart, and then the high jumper with the hula hoop, and then finally Leia and the beak. Okay, yeah, I think I got them. Yeah. Okay, I won't watch. Okay, so it should be 3 1 5 1 8 9 4 2 1 0 3 7 8 3 1 0 4 6 8 5. Yeah, that's right. 3 1 6 8 5 6 2 1 7 5. Yeah, so that's one of the, I think, the coolest things with these techniques, that it actually, once you got in there, you can just relax, because you know that it will stick there for a very long time. So you don't have to, like if I would have tried to memorize digits before, I would have to repeat them all the time in my mind and, until I was about to read them. But now I can just memorize them and then, yeah, don't care about it.
When you recalling the Oscars and you remembered in increments of 5, did you use the same trigger for every 5 years?
The same image for every 5 years?
Yeah, so you know how you would go to the nearest 5 and then work back or work forward. Do you use the same memory trigger for each 5 years?
Well, actually I use like my image for that year. So I use my image for 60, for example, which is a telephone. So I put a telephone on the 60, and then I put my image for 65, which is like a balloon on the 65, year 65. So I can, when you say a year, like if you say 73, then I think the closest one is 75, and I think of the image for 75, which is a beak, and I see where that beak is, and then I know that's 75, and then count 2 steps backwards.
So you never repeat the same visual?
Not if I do it like this, but I do obviously, like every time I want to remember 75, I always use a beak. So I sort of remember the same image in a lot of different places. But since you're placing them in a memory palace, so you're associating them to a particular image, then you don't like mess it up with something else, but you know exactly where everything is.
So you're memorizing a memory?
Yeah, I guess you could say that.
Can you memorize 2 dimensions memory as being lyrics for music? So can you remember the lyrics while you remember the music at the same time?
Well, I suppose it's a little bit difficult, because you sort of it's easier to memorize like one kind of information at a time. Of course, you can alter between information, but it's if I really wanted to memorize like music and the lyrics at the same time, I would have to sort of create some image for every combination of a tone and a word or something like that. So I think it might be difficult, but it's. I don't know. Just remembering music. I suppose that's quite different from remembering this other stuff, because it's difficult to just create an image for a particular song or music or so. So I think actually that the memory techniques wouldn't help you a lot with remembering music. Remembering the lyrics, of course, could help you a lot with that.
Can you see a picture and can describe the picture? I mean, it's a similar kind of question, but like a 2-dimensional picture. If you have a look at it and can describe it again.
Like a photographic memory?
Yeah.
No, actually not. I think that's something that you probably have to be born with. And I actually believe that I don't think that there's anyone in the world who actually have like a 100% photographic memory. There are obviously people who memorize things very easily, and they maybe can have like a photographic memory in some areas. But I think that they haven't been able to scientifically prove that a total photographic memory actually exists, and we haven't had anyone at the World Memory Championships who tried to win with a photographic memory yet. So I don't have it. I just use these techniques, but that's sort of enough for me.
Thank you. How do you possibly remember 3,500 binary numbers in the right sequence?
Yeah, I'm happy that you asked about that. I didn't really tell you. It's the same principle. I converted into images, and to do this, I don't know if we have the numbers. Yeah, maybe it doesn't matter so much, but yeah, let's see what. Oh, all right. No, we'll just you just have to picture it. Let's see. Yeah, we can leave it to be there. Well, I convert every sequence of 6 binary digits into an image. So I actually, you can, of course, you can use a lot of different methods to come up with these images, but I just looked at the sequence and tried to come up with something that I thought that it could look like. Yeah, you had to be a little bit creative to come up with something for every sequence. But there are 64 different sequences of 6 digits, so I only have to come up with 64 different images. So, for example, 100011. I thought that looked a little bit like a mouse trap with 3 pieces of cheese in it. So that's a cheese for me, a piece of cheese. And yeah, 010100. That looks sort of like four heads, and then the second head, or the second person, is swinging her arms like this. And when I was younger, me and my 2 brothers and my cousin Nora usually spent a lot of time together, and she was always doing this with her arms. So that sequence is Nora to me. So that's how it works. And then I just learned these images. Of course, that takes a while, but once you learn them, then I just combine them, also 3 and 3, into small stories, and put them in a very, very long memory journey. And yeah, that works very well if you do it, and then maybe 1 repetition, and then you have it.
I don't know how you spell your name. How do we spell your name?
My name, it's Jonas, and then VON with a small V, like a small organ, and then ESSEN.
Thank you. Do you have an email?
Yeah. Yes, I do. Yeah. If you're interested, like if you found this techniques interested, or if you forget some things, some of them, and want to remember what you were like, then you're of course free to contact me. I have an email. It's info@jonasvonessen.se. But you can also visit my webpage, which is jonasvonessen.se. It's probably as easy as memorizing the mail. So, and then there I have all the contact information. It's in Swedish, so it might be a little bit tricky to find it, but I think you'll be able to do it. So yeah. So feel free to contact me, and if some questions come up later.
What did you win at the competition? $1 million?
No, not this time. Well, actually, it's very different every year because like it's such a new kind of competition. So sometimes they get a big sponsor, and sometimes they don't. So the first time I won, they didn't have a sponsor at all, so there were no money. The second time there were a little bit of money, like last year there was some money. And this year they're actually having a really, really big Chinese sponsor. So I think that the winner will get at least $200,000. So that's quite cool. So I would really try to do it again. Thank you. Yeah, and then of course you also get a trophy and medals and so.
Do you need a manager, by the way? Well, look, we probably need to wrap it up. And I should mention, actually, that I've actually been lecturing this hall maybe about 50 times, and I've never been able to maintain students in this room for more than about half an hour. And somehow, despite the fact that it's 7 o'clock, most of the audience has remained. So it's really a great testament to an incredible talk. So join me in thanking Jonas for...
I have one last image that I would just, as the grand finale. And I'd like to just wrapping up by saying that I hope that you enjoyed the speech. It was really a lot of fun to give it to you, and I hope that you're interested, like you got a little bit interested in these techniques and might use some of them in your daily life, or might go and borrow some book or Google it or so, and that when you go out here or back to your school or back to your work, that you take a deep breath and then draw your super starlasting swords of doom. Thank you.